Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome again to another Friday Drinks. It's a hot afternoon in Harare, and we've got a special guest, somebody that I've known for over 20 years now. Hey? That's just how old we are.
Yeah, of course.
You know, we're getting older and older.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Then you didn't.
But he looks much younger than you, so clearly he's doing something right.
He has not been taking very good care of himself.
Yeah, I need to. I need to. He's actually lost a lot of weight.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. What sort of program have you been on?
We just need to eat once a day. It's good enough.
So intermittent fasting.
It's not fasting. It's just eating. It's once a day.
But once a day.
Yeah,
Okay.
once a day.
And which meal? Breakfast, lunch, dinner?
Doesn't matter. As long as you eat before 3 o'clock.
Okay.
After 3 p.m., nothing.
Okay.
Fruit salad and all the other junk stuff. But before 3, you can have anything else. But you know, I've lost weight. I'm happy.
Yeah. No, you have because
I've lost about
last time I met you,
16 kgs. I need to lose 5 more and I'm good. Yeah. But the problem is I have a very big head here. So when I keep losing weight, I then have a disproportionate body, structure. So
you look far better. I mean, the last time I met him, he was rotund. He was around 2 balls.
So apart from that, do you have any exercise or workout regime that you've adopted?
It's the food that really kills your body. Exercise, nothing.
That's actually true. And I think that intermittent fasting actually does work.
It moves the needle?
No, not just moves the needle. It actually makes you healthier.
Okay.
Then your insulin levels are stable. Because the biggest problem that we have, especially with weight gain, is, very volatile insulin levels.
Yeah.
And human beings actually, if you think about it, should just have 1 meal a day or 2 at most.
Yeah, of course. That's why we have fat reserves in the body. When we created back in the days, look, no one ever thought that we'd have these pantries and these silos full of food,
I mean, breakfast is relatively new 100%. Phenomenon.
Actually, we didn't evolve to have 3 meals a day consistently. We didn't evolve to have food at balance. I mean, our ancestors on the African savannah got food intermittently because they had to gather it or they had to hunt it.
Absolutely.
And sometimes they'd have bad days where they didn't get anything. So,
and it's actually bad that I come here and then I get this sweet stuff.
So you actually said you can eat anything and you can drink anything before 3 o'clock.
What time is it? I thought it's after 3 now.
Yeah, it's after 3.
It's just about. Yeah. So I'm sure you can.
Maybe for today.
For today,
if you allow
right?
me.
Yeah. No.
I will indulge.
Well, definitely. So this week, next week actually is Valentine's Day. Do you believe in Valentine's?
Well, it's a day
and it's a leap year. Apparently, so we as men should get the benefits of Valentine's.
Look, it's got some historical validity, but I think like a lot of these holidays, whether it's Easter or Christmas, they've been overly commercialized, and I think they lose some of their actual meaning. So, am I a great believer? No, not really. I think it's been overly commercialized, and like most of these days, I actually think that what we celebrate on, whether it's Valentine's Day or Easter or Christmas or any other special day, you ought to actually be celebrating throughout life, not on any particular day, but at every opportunity you have. Yeah.
Talking of over commercialization of stuff.
Yeah.
It's very ironical for you to speak like that while you are opening a bottle of Johnny Walker.
Yeah, look, Johnny Walker gets a really bad rap. It's the most commercially successful whiskey brand in the world. And for sure, a lot of Philistines drink it. But, that doesn't mean that they don't make good whiskey. And, a lot of whiskey snobs and aficionados look down on blends and this brand in particular. But they do actually make good whiskeys. And for them to actually succeed the way they have, and, the markets don't lie, right? Ultimately, when you think about it, we can have arguments about things that are subjective, like who's the best music artist currently and that sort of thing. It's a subjective argument, right? But when you look at sales or who's on, streaming the most on, the platforms of this age, that's an objective measure. So whether the music is crass or good or whatever, the market is telling us.
I hope you see the irony, especially after dissing St. Valentine's Day. But let me talk to my, former classmate here.
Yes.
Do you believe in St. Valentine's Day?
See, the problem is I don't really believe in that stuff, to be honest. Like you said, these are just commercialized activities, and with the advent of social media, everything has been blown out of proportion unnecessarily.
So you're not going to buy roses, and you're not going to get any roses.
I don't know. I'm not going to promise anything, but look, I really don't believe it. I just believe, you can't wait for the 14th to say to someone, I love you. You get my point. You can't wait for the 14th to express.
No, it's just a special occasion.
For who?
For your loved ones. Because they're expecting it.
For your romantic love.
If it's
not
special
just for your loved
if
ones.
it's special for
Not
them,
for your loved one.
if it's special for them, then it's for them, not really for me. You get it?
You're doing something special for them. Why would it be a problem?
It's not a problem. It's just that you don't believe in it, and that's it. These are pagan practices. You see, from a biblical perspective.
There's a lot of paganism that we're indulging in.
No, in Valentine's Day is one of them.
Do you celebrate Christmas?
What do you mean by celebrate?
No, well, take celebrate at face value.
I don't.
You don't? Okay.
Well,
all right, so we'll give you a pass.
Even your
Because-
calendar. Well, even the
I know
calendar.
You know where I was going, right?
Okay, so gentlemen, we're going to have a Malawi Shandy. It's a hot afternoon
It's a
in
colorful
Harare.
pink drink.
And this is how we're going to cool ourselves off and then have a very good conversation. So like I said, I've known Brains for quite some time, and he's one of our more eminent economists in the Zimbabwean.
Maybe you need to remove the word eminent, but anyway, it's fine.
So we have two dismal scientists in the bar today, and both of them are drinking pink drinks.
of course.
For a reason. And what I thought we should talk about is just the state of the Zimbabwean economy, and perhaps we haven't heard your voice as loudly as we used to. He's a guy who used to write in the Sunday Times and used to write acres and acres of words explaining what was happening in the economy. And you haven't been writing. What's happening?
Yeah, you see, you get tired with age. I think I've written more than 300, if not 400 or 500.
Articles.
Yes, in the local media and so on. And there's a point where you just believe that, look, you need to leave space for others. You
The new generation.
Yeah, there's a new generation, renewal of ideas and so on. I'm still stuck in
I don't know why you think that, though. Another economist that I hope you're a fan of, that certainly Tinashe and I are fans of, Thomas Sowell. He had a column that because he's now in his 90s, and I think he's had a column.
Forbes.
He used to write weekly consistently for 60 plus years. And I think the world is a better place for that wisdom and that writing and research. So, why are you starving us of your worldview?
It's not easy. Gentlemen, it's not just writing. It's about researching, and you need a lot of time on your hands, And I think my passion has really drifted.
Is this your way of telling us that you've made money?
No. Made money from writing?
No,
From other
elsewhere,
things.
from
Yeah,
other
No,
things. So,
not really. Yeah.
diminishing returns,
No,
the value in actually writing.
Not at all. You see, the problem now is that, when you look at, which is probably why I will need to start writing again, you see. The problem with Tinashe is that with the advent of social media, there are a lot of people with many opinions now, Opinions are now very cheap, on any subject, be it economics. I heard you talking about insulin levels and all that, as if you're a medical doctor. Not that you're not qualified to talk about it, you see, but the way you're expressing it, someone who doesn't really know you would think, look, this is a physician there, giving advice on diet and all that. So you see that most of the opinions on the economy, on anything really, economics, they are just being advanced by people that have no idea to some extent. They have the ideas, the ideas are there, but I think they're not.
It's not educated. Well, that's the reason why we have you on show, because this is actually someone who's actually educated and who's thought about these things and who understands the complexities of the economy. So just to get right into it, maybe you can start by just telling us just your general overview of the state of the Zimbabwean economy, February 2024.
That's a difficult question. That's a difficult opinion to pass. The economy is generally stable. I think that's the first point that I would make. It's okay. Everything seems to be fine. We don't have those wild and wide disruptions in the economy. If you know what has been happening in Zimbabwe in the last 3 decades. So at the moment, we seem to have approached a point where everything looks normal and stable. But of course, there are many undercurrents that are there that will definitely present more challenges in the future going forward. But the predominant use of the US dollar is definitely creating a stable environment. But with that, of course, with the huge risk now that the economy is now printing a lot of fake US dollars. The banking sector is creating a lot of fake dollars in the market. Not that they are doing it to destabilize the US dollar, but look, by just lending in US dollars, if you lend today, you create an asset and it accrues interest. You have basically created your own US dollars, and that's the major challenge.
So just to push back a bit, because people who are watching this will think, what's Brains smoking, especially when you look at the rate since January to, in fact, the last 30 days, the rate has lost, the Zimbabwean dollar has lost about 50% of its value.
Yes.
Is that stability?
Yeah, you see, I'm not interested in the Zimbabwe dollar because who uses the Zim dollar anymore? Okay. No one uses it. So
well, according to the World Bank report, about 20% of our economy is still US dollars. It's still Zim dollars.
Yeah, so 20%. So I'm not going to worry about the glass that is, it's 80% that I'm interested in.
Okay.
So 80% of the economy is. So why the Zim dollar loses value very fast, even it can lose 90% in a month, is because there is no demand anymore. There's no functional demand for that.
For Zim dollars.
So when there is no functional demand for a currency, it ceases to have value. Even at, what's the rate today?
Call it 16.8.
So no one knows really what 16,000 means to have a US dollar. It can be 5, it can be 35 tomorrow. It doesn't really matter anymore. Why? Because there is no functional demand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
When a currency is not demand, you really can't worry about what's happening to it.
All right, so let's go to the US
I tend to agree
economy.
with you, though. I think when people raise the Zim dollar, when we're discussing the Zimbabwean economy, I tend to think of it as talking about a storm in a teacup.
Yeah, the Zim dollar is. Even the government itself doesn't really care about the Zim dollar.
Well, if you really think about it, it's still about 4 billion worth of GDP, worth of economy. So it's still a significant part. 20% is 4 billion.
Yeah, you see the problem.
So it's still a significant part of our economy.
Indeed it is. But
right?
Who is using the Zim dollar?
Well, it's government, right? When they make payments. When they're making payments to contractors, civil servants, they're making them in Zim dollars. And then that also then has an impact on our nostro balances, which we'll get to later on. But I just wanted to ask to go through systematically, the different types of our economy, just focusing on what you term is stability. So let's go to the US dollars. If you look at the US dollar economy, if you look at 2022, 2023, and going into 2024, we've seen a drastic reduction in US dollar receipts. Yeah. Gold mining, I think it's down about 15%. If you look at all our exports, down about 15 to 20%. So the amount of US dollars that's actually in the economy has reduced by about 20%. Is that stability?
No, it's not the amount of US dollars that they've reduced, it's the inflows.
Yes, the inflows have reduced.
But it doesn't, when the inflows reduce, it doesn't necessarily mean that the stock is reduced.
Well, inflows is activity, right? Economic activity.
Yes.
So if economic activity, if your inflows have reduced by 20%, what does it mean? Well, how does it translate to economic activity?
You can imagine what has always happened in the gold sector, for example. If the price is not right at Fidelity, if those export the retention, the story about 25% retention, the gold figures, you never rely on those that you get from
okay,
the
so
offshore
even if we take away the gold, we're looking at platinum, we're looking at all our exports. The inflows have reduced.
When you look at platinum, yes, indeed. So when you have a reduction in inflows, it doesn't necessarily mean that the economy is no longer stable. You see, it doesn't. It's more like you're just driving your car and you reduce speed. It doesn't necessarily mean that you've lost something. The economy is still stable, notwithstanding that the inflows have reduced. You see, the issue about the economy, Tinashe, is that why do you need US dollars? Why are you interested in the inflows? Because when the inflows reduce, it means automatically that your expenditure is reduced. So you have there's no big problem.
But that's also not true because our imports have actually increased by $1 billion.
So the issue, the imports, the problem with the imports figures is that you need to be very careful about what we call imports. You see, if I set up a lithium mining plant in Zimbabwe, for example, and I decide to want to make money or to evade tax, right? I may actually declare equipment that is worth $40 million. And that will be accounted in.
Not as far as imports are concerned. As far as Zimtrade and Zimbabwe Zida are concerned, yes, that is very true. But as far as Zimra and as far as RBZ are concerned, they're really looking at money that has hit our account or money that has been sent abroad. So that's very clear.
In terms of imports.
In terms of imports. So this is
stuff that crosses the border.
Not just what we've actually paid for. Right, so they're very, very clear.
I'm not quite aware of those, but
yeah.
So how are we financing the imports then? That's the question.
Okay, so the first thing is, and I can get into the details. What I want you to take back is the idea
that the economy is stable.
That the economy is stable when every indicator is telling us it's not stable.
Which indicator? So
right?
the flow.
So the first thing is I said the Zim dollar, and the Zim dollar. Your argument is yes, it's unstable. You agree, but you're saying it's 20%. It's
not relevant.
It's 20% of the economy. Okay, fine, but I still think that 20% of the economy is still a significant part of the economy. Then the second thing is the US dollars, and we're saying that with the US dollars, if banking flow of money, if the circular flow of money is reduced by 20%, that is not stable. The circular flow. So whether you're calling it's imports or whatever it is.
Why are you characterizing it as secular when it's cyclical?
Maybe the question is how do you define stability? Maybe it's how do you define stability? Maybe.
Okay, so you drive a fancy car, and you can set the speed, right, at a particular, let's say 80 k's an hour. That's stable, right? You can drive at 80 k's an hour for 200 kilometers. That's stable. The minute, whichever way, whether you accelerate, it goes up, or you deaccelerate and it comes off, that is unstable. So unstable can be positive and negative, but it's not stable. You cannot argue that it's stable and not show or not share the statistics.
Maybe you should ask me why am I saying the economy is stable? Because yourself, you have your idea of what an unstable economy is.
Okay, please tell us what a stable economy is.
So I'm looking at the important aspects in the economy. In particular, for example, I'm looking at inflation. Don't worry about your Zimstats inflation, my friend. I'm looking at the US dollar inflation, which does not really get published. But for those that do in-house, our inflation has been quite stable. Inflation. The inflation that matters.
Because we also do US dollar inflation. What's your US dollar inflation?
It's about 4%.
So you're saying Zim US dollar inflation is lower than the US dollar inflation?
Yes, it is.
No, but the US inflation is below 4%. It's not.
Why would it?
US inflation now is 3%, 3.2%.
Yeah. So if we're at 4%, that's not.
No,
we're actually higher than.
Even if we're negative, Tinashe, there's a point. Remember when we're running negative inflation? You're aware. 2009.
So we have
10,
we have
11,
our US
12.
dollar inflation at 15%.
In-house.
You know.
Yeah, of course. It depends what business you are into.
No, this is looking at the general economy, and this is looking at. So, for example, you look at the Nostro. Nostro right now trades at a premium, or US to Nostro trades at call it 5%,
3.5 to 5%.
3.5 to 5%. So you agree with that, right? So your US dollar inflation, and when you consider Nostro, already it's plus. Because of that, it's already...
No, but I think you're conflating two things. So there's inflation, which speaks to how much a basket of goods in the supermarket costs. and then there is the premium on nostro balances. I don't think the two are related.
They are very much related.
I don't see how
Because
they're related.
if you want to import a good today that's sitting outside the country and you have nostro, you're not going to pay US dollar price on it. You're going to change your nostro into US dollars,
Yes, that's correct.
and that's the inflation.
Yeah, but
Already.
okay. But I'm going to push back on that because probably 80% plus, actually, conservatively speaking, is informal sector. It's a US dollar cash economy. So they're not banking and they don't have this challenge of that 3.5 to 5% premium whenever they have to pay a foreign supplier for goods. They're importing at 1-to-1 with notes. So, and if you think about the formal banking sector, it's actually, as its market share in the overall economy is shrinking. So it's so that 3.5 to 5% premium on nostro isn't as important as you're making it out to be.
It's actually very, very important. And again,
How is it?
I'm quite happy to get into the details.
Let's hear the.
And I'm quite happy to get into
the
the details. So if you look at anyone who's doing a transfer, right, whether informally or formally, they're having to pay a premium.
How does
to
an
do that
informal
job.
guy pay a premium?
Because when you have US dollar cash and you want to put it into a TT or a transfer outside, you're having to convert the US dollar cash into a TT that's offshore.
Not necessarily.
If you're outside,
that's actually not how a lot of the value transfer happens. So in the informal sector, a lot of that US dollar cash here, what happens to it is that the person who needs an import over there marries somebody offshore who needs cash in Zimbabwe and has money offshore. So if they're importing from South Africa and they need a rand payment done, they get that counterparty to make the rand payment and they release
That's
notes.
a swap.
Yeah, it's a swap. So I think
But
swaps
that's not
account for
significant.
most of how the informal sector
they
trades.
they don't account for most of the trade.
Because a lot of what the informal sector imports is smuggled in anyway. And it's
No, we don't
the
care
money
whether
moves
it's
right-
smuggled. We don't care whether it's smuggled
and
or not.
the money goes out of the country via swaps, not formal banking
Okay.
channels.
Formal banking channels right now, a lot of what we're importing is going through the formal banking channels,
Okay.
right? And for you to get cash into the formal banking channels, there is a premium.
Yeah, but okay. So again, let me stop you there.
I think you might need to understand, Tinashe, that when you deposit cash, definitely there are charges. You see, and there is an arbitrage that you see between the nostro, the nostro, and the actual nostro. You see, our local nostro. So those are the mechanics of trade and so on. But that does not take away the fact. That does not take away my thinking that we are generally having a stable economy.
Okay.
The fact that there is a premium on the nostro, there's a premium on the nostro, look, to me it's neither here nor there. You can't have an economy that is running at a perfect economy. It's not. But when you look at Zimbabwe, you look at our history as a country.
Am I getting
look
you
at-
correct? What you're saying is we're more stable than it was before.
Yes, but you will never find a point in this country or anywhere else, I guess, where you would say everything is perfect. There will always be challenges here and there.
Okay.
For
So-
example, you look in the mining sector, there are some Zimplats and so on. You look at mineral exports, definitely they are coming down. There are global issues that are affecting mineral prices, commodity prices. And look, it's nothing to do with us as a country. You look at what has happened to lithium, for example. All of a sudden, because there's a hard rock mineral, anyone can just wake up today, ramp up production, produce 1 million tons, from zero. From zero in January, December, you're breaking up 1 million tons, and that affects prices. And
I'm glad you're picking up that, because that tells us it's not stable. I'm
All
not
right,
saying
okay.
who is the cause of the stability
fine,
or the instability. I don't care where the instability is coming from. But you can't say someone who's a lithium miner who was earning X amount last year and this year has seen a drastic fall of over 50%. And you
80%.
80%, exactly. 80% fall. And then we come and we sit on an economics show and we say things are stable.
All right, so look, you can't, those are isolated issues. In business, understand that, I think those are some of the issues that you need to understand in business. Every business is unique. When someone else is losing money in lithium, someone else also is making money. So at the end of the day, what we are more interested is the collective. The same World Bank that you are quoting is saying the economy is going to grow by 3.5% or 3% report. So as long as there is growth, you see, we're good to go. We will need to then manage the other aspects, you see, but we can't have everyone on board. Some will have to fall by the wayside. It's not possible. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So stability is how you would describe the state of the Zimbabwean economy.
Very much so.
And what else? How would you describe the Zimbabwean economy?
Look, we are more interested. Okay, when I look at what are the key issues that are affecting us as an economy, I think I'm looking at the risks, right, that are going to upset the stability. My thinking is we have stability. But what are those risks that we need to manage so that we don't upset this? The first issue, I guess, is the issue of taxation. We have a lot of people in this country that do not pay tax, and the government has to do something about it. They have to increase the VAT rate. I would put it at 20%, for example, from where it is. It's way too low. The economy is largely informal, and unfortunately, the informal sector, they demand services as well, in as much as they are not paying taxes. That they are informal, whoever put them in the informal sector is neither here nor there. From a policy perspective, the government has to collect taxes from residents of this economy. And it's unfortunate that we're talking about Valentine just now. Everything has been commercialized, even living. It's been commercialized. Life is now a very commercial enterprise. When you look at your life as an individual, you are a profit-making entity, right? And because you're making profit, the government has to tax you because you need to demand a service. You need to use the road. When you drive around town now, a lot of cars that are exerting a lot of pressure on the roads, right? On the service industry, sewer, water, and so on. And most of those people are unfortunately in the informal sector. If you want to stay in town, you have to pay tax.
So if you're saying the economy is stable, why is tax revenue coming off?
I think don't confuse the two. The economy is stable, but the fact that the economy is stable does not necessarily imply that then tax revenue will be increasing. I think when you look at stability,
it means tax revenues would also be stable.
Tinashe is going to be pedantic and a stickler for this stability word all evening.
That's why
I want to push back on something a bit different. You think that it's a good idea to increase VAT to 20% from where it is. And my view is actually the problem isn't the actual percentages of any tax here.
Collections.
The problem is that the reason why the government is in a cash squeeze is because they collect tax primarily from the formal sector. And if the formal sector is losing market share to the informal sector, it just means just by that operation alone, without changing anything, the tax revenues are going to come off. And if they're serious about actually increasing tax revenues, right? Or if they increase VAT to 20%, for example, I believe all that will actually happen is that the consumer will consume less because the prices will go up, and they'll collect exactly the same amount in VAT
that they were far less,
or even less actually, right?
So far less.
So, and they ran this experiment with Delta and excise duty several years ago, where they thought, somebody.
Beer customers are not. You can't use customers.
No. But actually, you can. And the experiment that they ran is they were looking at their biggest taxpayers, and they saw that Delta was very near the top, and somebody had an epiphany that if we increase excise duty, we
collect more.
You collect more. And the management at Delta was at pains to explain to them the cost volume profit analysis, that if you actually increase excise duty, the prices will go up, people will consume less, and the nominal tax collected would actually go down. And they had a debate about this, and Zimra then said, look, let's run the experiment, let's increase excise duty. And Delta's prediction actually panned out. Revenue and collections went down. So I think the same is true for VAT, right? So that's the analogy I want to make.
So you're talking to someone who was brewing beer not so long ago. I used to have a brewery, by the way.
You're a good man. So why aren't you drinking?
You can't consume all your products, my friend. You can't consume all your products. We make these products for the market. I used to have a distiller.
Oh, you used to make spirits.
Not spirits. I think when you say spirits, you're
Distiller is spirit. You make you're distilling stuff.
Yeah.
So the product is a spirit, right?
When you say spirit, it's the connotation that is not.
Doesn't
It doesn't come out.
coming from me, best
Yeah, of
believe it's
course.
nothing religious.
Of course, yeah.
When I use the word spirits, I'm talking
So
about.
when you look at those the excise duties,
Yeah.
the taxes, they were not reasonable. You see, here I'm talking about just increasing your VAT rate from 15% to.
You think that's reasonable?
It's reasonable. Let's look at what it would do, say, to a pint of milk or to a whatever. You see, price of bread and so on. It's not because at the end of the day, guys, what we need to understand is that assume you're the Minister of Finance yourself, you have a whole lot of people to look after. There are a lot of expectations, right? And there are just a few people that are paying taxes. How do you balance the thing? You see, because
So you grow the formal sector.
Sorry?
You grow the formal sector.
Yeah, you grow the formal sector, but the problem now, you see, we have these cyclical issues in Zimbabwe. That's why I said we are in a stable environment. The most important thing is to say, how do we maintain the stability without really rocking the boat? You see, one thing that has always created problems for this economy is the inadequacy of fiscal revenue, right, to meet government needs. We can't run away from it.
Government expenditure.
Yes, we've had 3 decades of trial and error, you see, and we have lived through it all our lives in the financial services sector, from 1996 thereabout up to today. We have a lot of this, you see, and so my thinking is that we are at a point where it's possible to maintain or to extend the stability that we are seeing, to extend it by a further, maybe up to 2030.
Can I introduce a radical idea into the conversation? Because you speak about the government's need to increase its revenue, right? What if they actually cut costs?
It's possible. It's possible. You can cut costs, but you can't keep cutting costs.
Have they ever cut costs?
If they cut.
I wouldn't want. I'm not. Look, guys. I'm not the Minister of Finance here. But of course, we have not seen any. You see, the government has not been publicizing what it wants to do in terms of cutting costs. But,
we read their budgetary statements. We read financial statements.
Yeah, they are not.
All we see is condonation.
Yes,
more and more expenditure.
Where would you cut costs in health, for example, in education, or in most of these key.
Okay, I have a more philosophical question that I have for you. Is which country has ever grown from taxation?
No country has ever grown without taxation. I think let's start from there. Which country has grown without taxation?
Oh, we can have that conversation.
In the third world.
Well,
yeah, Dubai used to be a third world.
No, but
Singapore used to be a third world.
The United States used to be third world. Right.
So
and do you know the history of taxes? Do you know when taxes went up from 1% to where they are now?
2013.
Where?
In the US.
Yeah, but
the economic history.
Yeah, but my point is, when you look at us in Africa, you guys, how would you?
Mauritius.
How would you? Those are tax havens. You can't. Look, I wouldn't want to say something, But look, how do you compare Mauritius? Mauritius, if you want, we can create a Mauritius here in Zimbabwe, where look, all the people with the monies in the world, they bring their money here, and we just keep it here, and we keep quiet.
So why not?
But actually, you were going philosophical, and I thought what you were going to ask Brains is what is his view on the role of government in society? Because I'm getting the sense.
The first was tax. Like which country is actually, because he's a proponent of increasing taxes.
No, not generally, but I'm looking at Zimbabwe specifically. Gentlemen, understand that we look at our roads, Tinashe. Do you think there's a particular road even in your neighborhood that you will be so sure that in the next 30 years or 50 years, that same pothole you'll still be seeing it at the rate at which we are going?
So this side of the aisle is arguing that actually if we reduce VAT to 10%, tax revenue will actually increase.
How?
Because people will consume more, prices will come off, and people will consume more. Businesses will sell more. They'll actually make more in revenue, significantly more than they did at 15%, and the actual collection from government will be higher.
That's we've done
cost volume profit analysis.
We've done that.
Yeah, it's basic management accounting.
Yeah, NAFA is very clear.
We've done that many times in economics and so on. Gentlemen, when you look at our VAT collections, I think the most important thing is to look at what are where would government get its VAT from? And if we reduce the price, are people going to consume more because there's a price reduction or not? I think those are the issues.
Naturally.
Prices are elastic. Prices are elastic. If
Consumer goods.
If this was cheaper, I would consume more of it.
No. You guys are a better example.
No. It's when you look at bread, when you look at all the bread, meats, everything on the consumer
would you
basket.
consume more?
Yes, we would actually consume more.
Actually,
because
we've run this experiment.
When
When
people
bread
are
went
no
up to
longer
120, remember when those new rules were first. In fact, when the toll gate fees went up, and I think it's Mashingo, where they get most of their bread from Bulawayo, and the people who actually buy bulk bread and sell it in Mashingo in small quantities, they increased the price of bread. And they were actually complaining that people were consuming significantly less bread. And this is the price increase from $1 to $1.20.
Yeah, it depends with the pass through. You see how, but you see, at the end of the day, guys, I think what we need to look at is to say, how do we create a sustainable community, society in Zimbabwe, in the Zimbabwean context? Understand, number one, we have a government that has for many years, not once, had the temptation to print money. And with that, we've destabilized the economy.
So by many years, you mean 25, 30 years at least?
Yeah, if that's your definition of many, I agree with you. So here we are looking at ways. Look, I converse with the guys at the ministry, some of them, and you ask.
You're talking about Treasury?
Yeah, Treasury.
Okay.
Sure. And you understand their problem. They're not collecting, guys. Oh, you understand their problem. You can't have a society where people are just sitting and eating and putting pressure, demanding services, but they are not contributing to that.
Brains, you're a businessman.
Yeah.
If you were to reduce any of your product lines, the price of all your product lines by 10 to 15%, is demand going to increase?
Demand will definitely increase.
It will definitely increase, right?
Yeah.
Would you invest more in the business?
Definitely, I would.
If government,
it depends. Yeah, but
if government were to reduce its taxes, investors, business people would invest more. Consumers would consume more.
It doesn't necessarily follow, Tinashe. If you have an income of $300, you see, this is not straight jacket. If your income is $300, what you do is when taxes reduce that side, you probably put more money there. But at the end of the month, you would still have spent your $300. It's about preferences.
That's why I said there are two components. The first is the investment component, and we are saying that if government will reduce its taxes. So I'm not just looking at VAT, I'm looking at all its taxes. That actually, there are lots of people, lots of domestic investors who got money.
Alcohol here?
No, just splitters.
Thank you.
Although it does have a bit of alcohol, but not.
Do you want a shot?
Yeah, tomorrow morning.
So the argument is we have lots of people who've got money outside, which if there is increased demand, people will invest more.
Yeah, but
they're not.
Yeah, but
because the tax,
people are not going to invest. If you reduce your taxes today in Zimbabwe, don't never expect that people. Let's not make the assumption. Investors are not people they're not stupid people, Tinashe. If you are an investor, I always tell people that never think you will meet a person with $100 million in there, and their minds don't work. You see. If you reduce your taxes in Zimbabwe even to zero, do you think people will just start putting their millions and building factories and so on because Zimbabwe is at zero?
So the mistake that you're making is believing that a lot of investment is actually coming from foreign investment.
No, that's what you're saying.
I'm saying domestic investors. You have people right now who've got money outside. You've got businesses right now who are
money outside.
Oh yeah, we've got money outside of the country.
They're externalizing money.
This is not a
legal. No, I hear you. Yeah, okay.
You have money outside. I mean, let's not moralize this. Everybody.
No, I don't.
People keep money.
All my money is here.
People keep their money outside.
I'm so different from everyone else.
People keep their money outside. People keep their money outside of the banking sector. And the reason why that is being done, number one reason, is because of financial services instability.
Yeah, of course.
That is quite clear. But the other longer term issues are tax. that the supply side, we haven't done much as far as the supply side is concerned to invite the confidence that business requires to make those investments. Because if the supply side kicks in, if tax has an incentive for business to actually make the investments, domestic, I'm not even talking about foreign, then people will make the investment. Lots of people believe in this country, but the tax system is not conducive.
So what do you think? The tax rate should come to where? To 5-10%?
So we believe that we should have a single tax rate. And that single tax rate should be less than 10%.
Why should it be less than 10%?
So it should be less than 10% because then it's more competitive in Southern Africa and across the world.
I have a slightly different take from Tinashe, although I see where he's coming from, and I think that he's making a valid case for lower taxes. But I actually think that firstly, before any changes are made to our current tax regime, we've got to concede the point that Zimbabwe is one of the most highly taxed jurisdictions on the planet.
That is very true.
Okay, so I don't know what this jargon is in economics, which speaks to how much tax you can actually extract from any given
Laffer.
The Laffer effect, right? I think we're probably at the limit of that, and so the challenge is, so I am of the view that whatever changes we make to any individual tax head, whether it's VAT or completely new tax on property ownership, it's not actually going to change how much the government collects in taxes. The challenge really that we face is that the informal sector has shrunk materially as a percentage of the Zimbabwean economy. And most of the money is changing hands in part of the economy that does not pay any taxes, right? And the lowest hanging fruit, in my mind, from the government's point of view to increase its revenue is to change that split between the formal and informal sector and increase the formal market share at the expense of the informal market. Okay, so we now need to interrogate how we got here. Why is it that the informal sector is so big relative to the formal sector?
I agree with you. But you see, when you look at it from a progressive perspective, I think what the government needs to do. You see, the problem is for us to get there, where you increase the share of the formal sector, it's not going to be easy. Why did people leave the formal sector in the first place? I think that's the question.
Yes, that's
because
do you have a view?
Yeah, of course I know. I have a look. Because the government created, the government probably at one point bankrupted most of the people that were in the formal sector. There are policies that probably bankrupted people that were in the formal sector. And by such, look, people would just say they are safer in the informal sector than on the formal side, you see. But that's not a sustainable model, right? And unfortunately, there are services that the government would still need to offer to you and me, you see. But who is bearing that cost? That cost is being borne by the formal sector, which sector is now a very small percentage, you see. So those are long-term issues, gentlemen, that we are debating.
Is it a long-term issue?
Let's get into it, because that's why you're here.
Yeah.
What does government need to do?
What is
Speak
important?
directly to government.
Yeah. What is important?
Before you do that, could I have some ice, please?
Oh yeah, of course. Is it from the formal sector or from the informal sector? This ice.
It's from the formal sector.
Excellent. Yeah. So
you think he's going to admit that we got it corner?
Right. So, like I said, Tinashe, what is important, therefore, because you see, the challenge is you yourself. You're not seeing that. You're not seeing what I'm seeing. I'm seeing that the economy is generally stable, but we have a lot of undercurrents that are likely to destabilize this economy, and one of them will emanate from government, or one of the cause would be government collecting too little revenue, you see, and having lots of expenses. This US dollar environment that we have is definitely not sustainable. I don't expect that.
What's the alternative?
Not the alternative. This is not an alternative. It's the default. So the default is the Zim dollar. You know the Zim dollar, whatever you call it. Never think that we are going to be having the Zim dollar, the US dollar environment in 2020 or 2030. That's too long. But they've long reverted to a default currency, whatever you call it, whether it's Zim dollar. Or
Is this based on some data and objective analysis,
Yes,
or
yes,
this is wishful thinking?
No, definitely. Look at the disparity now between the actual US dollar cash and the claims, public claims in the banking sector. You see
But the banking sector is dying.
Why do you say it's dying?
Because you see, it follows directly and necessarily. If you take the view that the formal sector is
Small.
shrinking at the expense of the informal sector, and the formal sector is the bread and butter of the banking sector, right? If this trend continues, then the banks, how will the banks survive? How will they not die?
No, they will not die. They will not necessarily die. You see, it's not that the informal.
I'm being a devil's advocate. I'm not saying we're going to wake up one day and there's not going to be banking.
It's not going to happen.
But I'm just saying. Well, the point I want to make.
The problem is what will just happen is that the banking sector. You see, when you look even at the charges in the banking sector, when you look at their deposit, the average deposit base of the few banks, for them to just be able to make money in US dollars, that's why our interest is at 23%, 20%, and so on. It's because the formal sector is small, there are fewer deposits in the banking sector. And for a bank to survive, they'll need to charge you more. You see, that's why our interest
and that creates a perverse incentive for people to bank less.
Not to bank, but to borrow.
Yeah, exactly.
And all that, yeah. And the few that will take money into the bank, they will be penalized, you see, for doing that. And the few that will borrow from the banks like ourselves, that borrow from the banking sector, you are charged. Yeah?
I said brave man.
You are charged an arm and a leg, you see. So that is the situation that we need to look at.
So sorry to just take you back, because I need you to articulate it. I want to give you the platform in which you can articulate to government, to policymakers, and to everybody. How do we ensure that the informal sector becomes formalized?
It's not an easy road, Tinashe. It's going to take a long time. But the most important is that we need to continue with the stability, right, that we're enjoying. And so that is why I'm talking about the need to manage the risks that are going to upset the stability that we're having. Now you can still deposit your money in the bank. Get it? Do your transfer. Go to the bank, deposit your US dollars, make a transfer. You don't need to ask, the Reserve Bank doesn't need to come to you and say, are you on the priority list? You remember what used to happen at the time, yeah? So we don't need to go back there. But at the rate at which the economy is moving, we are likely to get there sooner.
The stable economy is moving in a certain way.
Yes, the stability. So we need to manage to yeah, definitely. We are stable. There are no two ways about it.
But still haven't answered.
Yeah.
How someone is in the formal sector will move back into the formal sector.
Someone has to see the benefits of being formal, right? Like I said, it doesn't come overnight. It doesn't come over a year.
But I want to
let him, because we want to give him time to actually articulate his plan. Because I think he's got a plan, and we've given him.
Not that I've got a plan. If you say I've got a plan, I think you're now.
I think you're being kind. I think you're giving him rope. But anyway,
let him articulate.
But then when you say you're giving me, the plan to, it's like I'm now the Minister of Finance.
Suppose you were blank piece of paper.
You need sustainable policies. You need credible policies on the fiscal front and the monetary front. All the other cosmetic issues will not entice anyone to be formal, you see.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's good. So you
need an interest rate policy, for example. That is reasonable.
So the fiscal, and that's something that we've already discussed. But your idea was to increase taxes.
To some extent, yes.
So would someone who's informal then become formalized?
Why the issue of increasing taxes, understand, is not because you want to draw people from the informal sector. You want to make sure that you reduce the temptation by the government to upset the current environment. If the government doesn't receive money, guys, you know what has always happened in Zimbabwe. They just print the money.
But that's not going to work this time around, because the market share of the Zim dollar is now so low. We discussed it at the top of the show, where we were saying, and I think 20% is actually generous to say that 20% of our economy is Zim dollar based, because I think that it's actually trending towards less and less Zim dollars and more US dollars.
Do you think the government can't create nostril US dollars in this market?
Of course they can.
You see now. So let's not. Why do we want to tempt them to do that? Well,
they may well do that, but, but that's not the solution.
Yeah, exactly. So the solution is to increase what? Revenue. That's why I'm talking about
higher taxes won't increase revenue.
I think it would.
Okay, let's move on. So that's one, and then another fiscal activity that could happen that could ensure that there's greater formalization
of the economy.
Yeah,
when you look at the government, then needs to look at its expenditure side. It has to cut expenditure. You see, the problem that we've been having.
I'll say cheers to that.
Right, I think the problem that we've been having is that we are more focused on revenue collection, you see, than on the expenditure side to say how do we streamline. It's about striking the right balance, you see. It's not going to be easy to reduce government expenditure because most of which key social service ministries are okay at the moment. You look at health, you look at education, you look at...
So which budgetary lines would you target yourself? So again, if you're speaking directly to a policymaker, what would you say? You know what, guys, I hear you, we need to increase revenue. And my view, which we disagree with, but that's your view, is increase taxes. That's fine. And you've looked at VAT. And then you're also saying, but you need to balance that out, which I think is a very reasonable argument, with a cut in expenditure.
Yes.
And from the expenditure side, which budgetary items would you look at?
Yeah, you see, when you look at... It's about general, you see, the general procurement of the government. I think if they do something about that, they could probably save half of the revenue, because imagine when government wants to buy...
So you're saying the control environment is not as tight as it should be?
Yeah, it's about some of these procurement issues. For
Corruption.
Example, when... I wouldn't say corruption, really. When government
if you're paying twice what you should be.
Yeah, when government wants to buy cement,
corruption or
a government department wants to buy cement, they fly the tender for cement. The manufacturer of cement don't even bother responding to those tenders. They know that Sinatra is going to get that tender and then he'll come here with cash and I'll give them cement. You get it? So end up buying cement at twice the price of cement or 1.5 times. When you know so sure that there are only 2 or 3 manufacturers of cement in this country, where, do you get my point? When the government wants to buy a Toyota, they know Toyota Zimbabwe is authorized dealer of Toyota. And all the other bidders for that tender will eventually revert to Toyota. But when you look at government procurement, the quantum, it's huge.
Okay. So theoretically, by how much should government reduce its expenditure by?
It can reduce its expenditure, unproductive expenditure.
Yeah, by
50%.
50%. Yeah. So you're saying if it reduces its unproductive expenditure by 50%,
it frees up
a lot of fiscal space.
Yes, it frees up a lot of fiscal space. It reduces the temptation to then print money.
Okay, all right. So increase taxes, reduce expenditure. That's on the fiscal side. On the monetary side, what are your views?
On the monetary side, you see, we need to manage the interest rates. Control the rates, not control them, but we look.
Why should we manage them? Why don't we just let the market decide what interest rate makes sense?
Yeah, when we do that, understand we are lending in Zimbabwe in US dollars.
Okay.
When a bank lends out, it creates money. Definitely, it's creating money, and for that not to upset the stock, for that not to upset the balance, we have to have a concomitant increase in export receipts, right? To cancel that out.
No, not at all. Why? You
could let him land. It's not a. It's a slippery slope. Yeah. But let him.
Yeah.
Let him land, and then I'll give you the time
we need to understand. We need to understand how banks create money, right?
Yes, credit creation.
Credit creation, yeah, and how that increases the stock of money in an economy, and how we eventually end up with money that is not supported by real money. And when you see our interest is at 20-25%, and you're lending locally and you don't have lender of last resort in US dollars, we are basically printing money. Remember what happened in 2000. Economics, Tinashe, remember, we are students of history. We usually rely on history to analyze the present and probably predict the future. We're not the artificial intelligence kind of students that try to do things, you know. That's exactly what happened in 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, until we eventually ended up having a big stock of fake US dollars in this economy.
So you think it was just the banks, the private
No,
sector?
no. It's the banks and the government. And the banks, to a large extent, they contributed a huge... I used to run a microfinance myself with loan sharks
Are
at
you
that
calling
time.
yourself one of the culprits?
No. Not the culprits, but we were the enablers.
How?
Yeah. You start out your microfinance with a certain amount of money. Before you know it, you've doubled it. Before you know it, you've tripled
But that's your equity.
it. Yeah. But how are you
That's good
creating...
business.
You didn't pick up deposit.
We're not picking deposits.
Exactly. So you're lending out your equity.
Yes, you're creating money. So
How are you
the
creating
point
money
is-
when you're lending out your equity?
Yeah, exactly.
Remember, banks create money. Or if you were to go to the theory, or let me allow. Were you going to talk about the theory, or are you going to talk about the?
No, let me
I was
finish.
just
Yeah.
going
All right, so let him finish.
Yeah.
Okay, let him finish.
You guys, I mean, yes, I was in business. You would think that's business. I'm lending my equity.
That's why he stopped
I'm
writing. You were right about him making money.
I'm making money, and you think I'm making money and so on. Yeah, but at the end of the day, when you look at the bigger picture, you look at the composite picture. That's what everyone in the banking sector was doing. You know, just busy printing money. And when you look as well at the fact that the reserve requirement usually on the US dollars is very low. So what it means is that you can create as much money as you want in the economy, you see, not without limit, so to say, you see. But what's supporting that, you see? Eventually, we end up creating a situation with fake dollars. Why? Because you remember the clearing system, we're not clearing, we have a local clearing system, and that creates a problem, you see. If we're clearing straight in the US, it would be very difficult. But because you've got a localized clearing system, settlement system for the US dollars, it becomes easier to create your own US dollars.
Okay.
It happened, guys, before. Where eventually, you remember, we used to have this, and you ended up having that statutory instrument in 2019, I think, that then said, look, these are not US dollars at all, guys. If you think of US dollars, look, go somewhere else. They are now Zimbabwe dollars. How did that happen? It happened exactly because of what I'm telling you. And that's going to happen again. If you believe it's not going to happen, I'm happy this show is, it's going to be here for a long time. Let's talk about this in 2028, 2029. Not 20, that's too long. 2027, 28, we'll be talking about this. Where
So
you want to make a payment, you deposit your so-called nostrils, US dollars, and you're told, my friend, this is not money. So that can be resolved from a monetary policy perspective.
Okay. So I think that so that we're very clear, because we do have a fiduciary duty to lay out the facts. I think that banks were extremely responsible from 2009 to 2013.
And those that went failed.
And those that weren't failed, and so because we need to be factually correct. Then there was no lender. There was no lender of last resort, and any money creation that they were making it because remember, when you create money, you're also creating concomitantly a rush on your deposits. So whatever loans you're creating, you know that you can quickly lose the bank and the stability if everybody then claims their deposit. So whatever lending is happening, there's a lot of risk management, a control, and people are willing to take that risk. So you do create the money, but at the same time you're saying, if there's a run on my deposits, I can pay out. And there was no banker of last resort. So whatever banking creation was done, it was fully underwritten by the bank's equity. The problem started when you now had a banker of last resort, when the clearing was now being done by the central bank, was no longer happening at bank level. Because at bank level, I could, if money was coming from bank A, I could easily, not honor it and say, you know what, if money is coming from this bank, I'm not going to honor it. But if it's coming from X bank, I will honor it and I'll pay out US dollars. But when the clearing was now happening at central bank, The onus was now on central bank to keep the system,
To manage the integrity.
integrity of the system. So if the integrity of the central bank is compromised, then obviously it compromises the entire system.
So you're saying when we reverted to the Zim dollar, it was the integrity of the central bank?
Yes, primarily it was the integrity of the central bank.
The central bank that had siphoned all the US dollars in the economy?
Yes, because it's the central bank and the treasury that introduced treasury bills that were not backed up by real US dollars.
Exactly.
It's not the banks.
Yeah, but no. I'm not saying it was the banks. Remember where the assumptions at the central bank. So I'm aware of all these issues. So you asked what the monetary policy, what we can be done from a monetary policy perspective. Understand the bankers had their fair share. The government did its fair share. That's why I
don't think the shares are fair at all. But
no. Yeah, the government did its own fair share. And how fair then is another issue. So that's why I said initially, what is important is we need to make sure that the government doesn't run the same risk of printing US dollars, right? So it needs money. So that's why I was talking about increasing. It's not that it will be permanently at 20. You want to be able to, to navigate. And then on the other side, because it's not only the government, it's the banking sector as well, the private sector. You can't, Tinashe, who runs which country would have US dollars as a medium of exchange and have interest rates of 20-25%, and their exports are not increasing at that rate, and you expect that, and the clearing is done locally. The settlement is done at the local, this is a local settlement, and you expect that they will remain US dollars. Gentlemen, we'll be fooling ourselves. We'll start creating our own fake US dollars. We've done that before. And
that's true.
And if the incoming governor doesn't look at this issue appropriately, look, it will create problems for him, because you see what will happen is that there is a transition that is going to happen now. And all of a sudden, before you know it, in 2-3 years, people will think, it's the new governor that created the problem.
So I'm going to give Rufaro, because there's a lot that has been said, and I know that you've been itching to say something. So I'm going to give you the platform to reply to a lot of the things that are...
Yeah, so I think, when you was talking about credit creation and I was talking about exporters, for example, right? It doesn't have to be a loan or advance to an exporter. It can actually be to somebody who's running a local business where they're growing food or whatever it is and selling it, right? But they see growth in their business. They see growth in their revenue and their profitability, and they're comfortable borrowing at that interest rate because they're generating the cash flows to pay it, right? So it's not the case that,
No, I didn't say you have to lend to an export. I said at the end of the day, your export receipts will need to increase at a rate that will be able to counteract the monies that the banking sector have created.
Because ultimately, like Tinashe articulated, the bank must be able to meet depositors' requirements on demand. So they're going to assess whoever they lend to and get comfort that they have capacity to actually pay back, and if something goes horribly wrong, their security will actually cover the position. So and if I was to allocate, blame in terms of the challenges that we had when we transitioned from US dollars to Zim dollars in 2016, I would say the private banking sector should bear at most 1% of the blame. And Treasury and the central bank
understand a few things. At that time, the loan to deposit ratios for most of these banks 70, 80%, 90%, right? Loan to deposit ratios.
Which banks are these? Are we talking about the same banks?
No, yes, the same banks. Look at
Barclays,
Standard.
No. That's where a lot of the deposits were.
No, guys, let's not mix issues here. Let's even look at the banks that then collapsed.
Yeah, but those failed, you see, and the rest of the banking sector.
And that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, they collapsed. But when a bank collapses, it doesn't mean that it goes with this mess. You get my point.
But that's perfectly fine.
No.
But bank failure is perfectly fine.
It's fine all the time. But it's fine. It's okay. But the regulator could have done something about it. Like at the current moment, Tinashe, it's not going to be sustainable. Believe you me, guys. You might not like this, but that's definitely going to happen. At 23% interest rate. Look at the quantum, you look at the deposits that are sitting in the banking sector, you look at the loan to deposit ratio, you then look at the quantum that is generating the 20%, creating 20% in US dollars every year, right? you think that money is coming from exports and so on. The banks are creating money. You need to understand how banks create money, and we need
So just something that I've just picked up, because yes, I am very pedantic about these things. If we are facing 20% interest rate, and U.S. economy is facing 5% interest rate, why would our inflation be lower than the U.S. or
Well, it's higher.
roundabout?
It's higher.
Yeah, why would it be roundabout the same inflation rate? US dollar inflation.
Yeah, you need to understand that there's no direct link between the rate of inflation and interest rate. You see, it could be.
That's orthodox
No.
economics. There's a direct link.
Zimbabwe does not. Things don't happen that way. If things happen that way, orthodox economics, the way you're talking about, we wouldn't be having this discussion about the economy and
Basically accusing you of being bookish. We've heard that language before.
Understand that I can borrow at 20%, even at 30% in US dollars, and not increase my prices and still be able to pay back.
Do you think that's feasible?
I've done that many times. It's possible.
All right. Okay.
It's possible.
Because the
It's
producer
about
is jumping up and
your
down.
margins. It's about your margins, your volumes, and all that. It doesn't necessarily. You don't need to pass that on to your price. You compete yourself out of business, and you'll be out.
Okay. So the producer is jumping up and down. So before we leave, I'm going to give you about 5 minutes, uninterrupted. And what I want you to do is to talk directly to John Muchemwa, who's coming in as the central bank governor. What's your advice to him directly?
Yeah, he's coming in at a difficult time where everything is very normal. Looks so normal on the surface. Stable. Everything's stable. People can still go about their business, borrow and make payments, offshore payments and all that. But underneath, there's a currency. There's strong currencies that are likely to rock the boat, and in particular the unsupported stock of US dollars that this economy is creating. And my message to the governor is that he has to manage interest rates in the banking sector. That's very important. He has to manage he has to increase the reserve requirement on the US dollar component, because what we don't want to do in this economy is to allow the banking sector to create a lot of unsupported US dollars. Eventually, that is just, look, it's not sustainable. Eventually, it will just best. So that's my second message. My other message to the governor is that we need to disband issues to do with, for example, the auction rate and all that, the auction system. It's a system that is not efficient. The problem with the auction is that what it has always done is that it has created a situation where all odds win, whereby look, you are so sure that you borrow you can borrow money from the market, buy US dollars on the auction, and you are so sure that the exchange rate will depreciate and you'll be able to pay off and make a profit. So all odds win scenario is one that is being created by the auction system, and that has to be disbanded. If people want to tap into US dollars, they should swap. You bring your Zim dollars today. I don't think the miners and the exporters would be averse to this, where they appreciate that, okay, that's the state of the economy. For a year, if I export, my money will be at the central bank for a year. Those that want to borrow it and swap with Zim dollars, they will swap. You come in, you want your money from the auction, you put your Zim dollars, you get the US dollars, because you are in the business of whatever it is. We don't need to know your business. You swap. After some time, you have to pay back these US dollars. I think that is the only way that we are going to protect the integrity of the Zimbabwe dollar, because the problem now is that most of the people that are shorting the Zim dollar are the same people that are benefiting from the auction. And I think what is important is that for John, he doesn't need to really listen to the private sector concerns, especially for those that want freebies and subsidies. There are a lot of people in this country, I've met a lot of these people, where they run their businesses, but their businesses are being successful on account of the subsidies that they're getting from the government. And when you hear them talking to policymakers, they appear like they are doing this economy a big favor, and that their companies are very important. They are key to the stability and so on of this economy. And I think the central bank doesn't need to worry about those people. anyone who is running their business, they should do it at their own enterprise, take risk. If anything happens, they just fall by the wayside. Lastly, this issue about legacy debts that are being converted at 1:1, I think the central bank should have no interest whatsoever in guaranteeing private profit or private enterprise and private risk taking. The issue, Tinashe, is that a lot of people take risks in the economy and they expect that the government will be able to take up when they make losses and
to socialize the losses.
And at the end of the day, it affects everyone, including myself. Prices start going up and so on because someone was taking a lot of excessive risk. If someone takes risks, but they're a private enterprise, if they should be able to live long enough to face the consequences without the central bank. So our central bank has been abused for a very long time by the private sector, especially the private sector. People that have personal interests, they approach the governor and want to push certain positions and so on as if it's...
Okay, the lobbyists and cronies.
They're not lobbyists, really. They're just criminals, I think.
Well, there you've had it from Brains. Thank you very much for coming. You know, there's a lot that we need to talk about, but I think a lot of our disagreements are more theoretical. So maybe we need to do another session where we really
disagree more. Yes.
We disagree more on the theory, and I think people would actually benefit because I think we're getting into the weeds. But I love the weeds because that's where the theory comes from, and it's perfectly all right to disagree. But I think the audience actually benefits from the discussions. So hopefully you will come back again. If you
invite me, I'll come. I know you don't like my views, but look.
No, we love your views. We love people we disagree with.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just joking.
Yeah, fantastic. Otherwise, have yourself a wonderful afternoon, evening, and weekend, and we'll see you next week. Cheers.